everybody, we're back. Folks, my next guest tonight has been a staple in the newspaper business for the past 35 years. His latest book, Piecework, is a collection of his best writing since 1970. Folks, please welcome Pete Hamill. How are you?
Good. It's
you look well?
It was like being on the reading the New York Post here tonight. A great sports piece, a horse meat scandal, and the DuPont air giving out the moths.
That is the actual DuPont air. We got him. Isn't that incredible? The police released him. It's fine. He can be in our sketches. Congratulations on the book, first of all. Is this this is compiling all your work for...
It's like a greatest hits album, you know. It's
right. You actually
it's a selection rather. If I had to do all of it, it would be about 10 volumes long. But it's work over the last 25 years of an amazing variety of stuff. When I began to look at it, I said, I can't believe I did all this.
Well, it's funny because when you look through all of this, you must probably realize more than anything else how much the newspaper business has changed since you started out.
Well, just as an example, when I started out in 1960, there were 7 newspapers in New York. There are now 3. It made it possible for people to come in, drift in and out of the papers. When I was there were a whole bunch of sort of anarchist bohemian types who came from the Depression, World War II. They'd work for a while, throw a typewriter out a window, and move to the next.
People threw typewriters out the windows back
then? Yeah, we were
then?
only on the 3rd floor, and sometimes they went out.
This is the golden age of journalism we're talking about.
But where we worked at the New York Post in those days was right across the street from the United Fruit Pier. And there was no air conditioning, so these windows would be open in August, and the fruit flies would start to come over. And you would type like this, you know, police today were looking for the killer of an escaped nun, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the way it is these days.
No,
you know?
not the way you envision it. Yeah.
It's a lot. I think it's a lot more professional now, the newspaper business, and a lot less fun. I mean, we had crazy people would wander into the place. There was no security. People would come in claiming that they'd just been kidnapped by space aliens. We'd find Eleanor Roosevelt once sent a guy down on a tryout, her recommendation.
To be a writer on the...
To be a writer at the newspaper. He was a failed opera singer. So he would write like this and then go, whoa, and begin to sing. And all these old guys said, who's this?
Right.
And he was gone before the night was out, but it was an entertaining evening.
Did people really wear hats back then, fedoras that they'd put a press card in and say, hurry up, we got to get going, there's a fire over at McCready's Barn, let's go? Is that how people talk back then?
Not in the city room, but the photographers did. So you'd be sitting there writing, send you out on some murder somewhere, and you run downstairs, the photographers are there with the press cards and the speed graphics, these old great big cameras. And
the big ones that have a big flash. You know. Exactly.
Exactly. Blinding everybody, including the suspects usually half the time.
Because that's how I envision old-time newspapers, is from movies like The Front Page, where people talk really quickly and they wear suspenders and they always have like a little cigar in the corner of their mouth and they say things like, you better come clean, pal.
That was all true. It was all true. And those newspapers, newspaper movies were written by newspapermen. Ben Hecht and MacArthur wrote The Front Page. They were writing out of what they knew. Today, it's not the same. First of all, nobody smokes. You're not allowed to smoke in the place. So you see a lot of old newspapermen on window ledges, 15 stories up, you know, smoking Camels, you know, or whatever. You know,
do those old guys still throw typewriters out the window for old time's sake?
God, I hope I'm not in the neighborhood if they do.
Yeah.
They also, because they don't smoke, there's carpets everywhere. Whereas in the old days, when I first went to work, it was like a wall-to-wall ashtray. People went to work there so they could put cigarettes out on the floor.
That's what floors were for back then. Floors were ashtrays back then.
And that's why they became newspapermen instead of lawyers. They wanted to put cigarettes out on the floor, and they did a pretty good job of it.
Yeah.
But it began to change, I think, as people began to get paid what they were worth. There was a serious transition. The Newspaper Guild accomplished what it wanted to do, and it paid people what they were worth. The result was newspapermen who used to be bohemian anarchists ended up moving to the suburbs and having dogs and barbecues and pianos and things like that.
Went straight to hell.
Instead of being the worst husbands in the world, which they used to be, and living in some hotel.
What were you getting paid when you started out?
When I started out, I got paid $103. That included night differential.
And that was a year. $103 a year.
$103 a week, and the $3 was an extra $3 added on for working nights. And when I left the first time around at the Post, 1974, I was making like $15,000 a year, and I was writing 4 columns a week. So there was never a place that anybody went to get rich. And it's still not the place to go to get rich, but it was a place that you went for the life. You went for the excitement. You went for the idea that no night or no day was ever going to be the same as any other one. It was not like working in an insurance company. There was a romance to it.
Yeah.
And it was being true to that a lot of us stayed with it through all those years.
There was one part I was reading in the book earlier today about you're sitting at home and you get a phone call. This is a little off topic, but it's sort of stuck out. You get a phone call from Frank Sinatra.
That's true. I knew him.
And just briefly, because we're running out of time, but just as a nice little moment.
And he said to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm reading a book." He said, "Read it tomorrow. We're all over here at Jilly's." Off we went to Jilly's, this kind of place with a velvet rope. It had to be, obviously.
And Jilly's, of course, the great name for Sinatra to be hanging out at. Yeah.
And they had a velvet rope because all the apprentice gangsters would come whenever they heard Sinatra.
The gangsters in training, all right.
And Sinatra looked up, and there were a lot of guys like standing around like this, you know, white ties and black shirts and everything. And Sinatra said, "You know, there's 43 indictments right there at the bar." To which Pat Henry, the comic, said, "Present company excluded." And Sinatra said, "It better be." And off we went into the night. And we ended up spending a wonderful night with Sinatra. Because
you walk around with him, and it's a really cool story. You walk around the city, you and Frank Sinatra alone. Right. Just walking around, reminiscing about
it was before he got married to Barbara. He had some beautiful young woman with him who dropped off. And we drove around for a while talking about music and so on. But at one point he said, you know what it is? He says, you get older and you know less. And I think that's true of any of us who've hung around long enough. You're much more certain about what you know when you're 25 than when you're 55. And Sinatra, I think, understood that, which is in his music, too. You know, the great part of Sinatra's music, the expression of loneliness, is about not knowing. There's a kind of baffled part to him when he's really great.
Well, there's a lot of great stuff in this book. It's called Piecework by Pete Hamill. Pete, thanks so much for coming here. Nice to have you with us. Pete Hamill, everybody. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Stay right there. Folks, that's our show for the night. I want to thank all my guests. Pete Hamill, thank you very much. Best of luck with the book.
Thank you.
Come on back. Also, my thanks to Mary Steenburgen for being with us tonight. And to Super Bowl MVP Larry Brown for being here. Of course, Andy Richter, the Max Weinberg 7. Stay tuned for Later with Greg Kinnear. Greg's guest tonight is Andy Garcia. Good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.